What is going on, wrestling fans? It's I, Steve Hall. Welcome back to 10 Count Media. You're checking your lighting, aren't you?
Lighting, yeah.
Off camera, folks, before we do introductions, Mark was looking at his lighting, bringing some lamps. I hope we have updated your lighting. How do you feel about it, though?
No, I think I should have gotten the lamp where the lights hang down instead of project upwards for the right side. But you're going to send me that link. I'm going to get me a ring light, and we'll be better next time. So,
all right,
I'll deal with it. I'm good.
Well, welcome back to the Too Real for the Ring podcast, and we're taking the journey through your career in the WWE and beyond. And today we're talking about your relationship with Latino Heat, Eddie Guerrero. I have never met someone who doesn't like Eddie Guerrero, and if I do, I'll punch you in the face. But anyways, what were your thoughts on Eddie Guerrero before you got into the WWE? What did you know about him? Because to me, he is one of the top of all time.
One of the best visually appealing technical wrestlers, as far as his athletic ability in the ring was really second to none. Watching Eddie in WCW, watching the match that he had with Ray, watching the matches he had with bigger guys, Eddie was just so fluid and so smooth and so athletic. And then when he came to the WWE, the thing that I remember most about Eddie prior to me meeting him was just that moment where Eddie Guerrero, was it Chris Benoit who won the WWE Championship, and then Eddie came out to congratulate him?
Yes, WrestleMania 20, they hugged each other at the end. You'll never see that again, but yeah.
But it was recognizing that you don't have to be a big guy to get over, because back during when I was watching, 2000, first of all, let's go way back, late 80s, all giants. Very rarely do you see someone who wasn't a giant that was over. When I started watching again, Rock, Steve Austin, Triple H, big dudes, really big guys. When Benoit won the title at WrestleMania 20 and Eddie comes out, it was kind of like not just a celebration for Benoit, but for Eddie as well, that you don't have to be a giant to get over and to be a champion. And everything that Eddie did in the ring was so creative. And so innovative, even not just the wrestling, but just his gimmick, that Latino Heat gimmick, that lie, cheat, and steal, and I still see clips of it today, and I still laugh every time. I think the last one I saw was with Ken Anderson, where like he throws the chair at him and then he falls down. I mean, what he was doing was just so fresh and new to me. And I know that those go way back, but Eddie brought that to mainstream television, and he just did it so well that it was hard not to enjoy watching him, whether he was a heel or a babyface. So my impressions of Eddie was, this is one of the most talented wrestlers, and he's a generational wrestling talent in the history of the business. And I stand by that. And I don't think anybody would disagree that Eddie Guerrero was, in all aspects of what makes you successful in the wrestling business, one of the most talented that ever wrestled.
It's so true, because even today's world, anyone who does the throw the chair and someone catches its spot and lays down, everyone knows that's a tip of the hat to Eddie Guerrero. Every time. They still do it today in today's world of wrestling. And so still happens. And then when people do a frog splash, Rob Van Dam, great 5-star frog splash. But when you get to that top rope and you start shaking, dancing around a little bit, and you hit that frog splash, Eddie chants. Little 5-year-old kids chanting Eddie. They probably, if they're 5 years old, they weren't around when Eddie Guerrero was alive, but yet they respect him and they know him. And just from that little shimmy, and
here's what made it so good. We're going back and we're thinking about all the Latino Heat. He just enjoyed himself so much out there. And I think that that's what made it fun to watch, is because you're enjoying what he's doing, but even more so, you can totally tell that Eddie is enjoying what he's doing out there. He loved it, and I think that's why he was so good at it. I'm like, just going back and watching, and the low rider coming down to the ring, and he just loved it. And I think that that's what really got that gimmick over, was the pure and genuine joy that he had to play it. And the things that he did in the ring is finally like his gimmick matched the excellence of his wrestling. And it was like convergence of both. And I think he really enjoyed and appreciated the fact that this was it, and he was over. And not only was he over, he was more over than anybody else at the time.
Well, even in today's world, Dominic Mysterio he calls Rey Mysterio a deadbeat dad. And then anytime there's a holiday or there's a celebration, he always talks about his father being Eddie Guerrero, still to this day, because in 2005, I think it was, They had a ladder match for the custody of Dominic Mysterio at SummerSlam. And in today's world, that is still brought up with Dom Mysterio. That to me is like longevity.
I don't watch a lot of wrestling, but I love Dominic Mysterio. I think he is the most talented personality that I've seen in the last few years. And I've seen interviews with him, and I just love, and I don't think that's true. He doesn't think Eddie Guerrero is his father, and he doesn't like Rey Mysterio. I just think he just stays in character, but he's hysterical. He's so funny. I remember him when he was a little boy because I was there. And it's just so funny now to see him grown up and really being one of the top guys in WWE, because man, he is just so good. He's hysterical. He's so funny. But a lot of what he does is a throwback to what Eddie was doing, 20 something years ago. And so I just love that he stays in character, and I love everything that he does. And I think that for not being a giant, he is really, truly, what's the word I'm looking for? He's truly a great. Steve, I'm lost for words.
I don't know what's the word. I don't know. I'm not in your brain.
Tribute.
A tribute.
Tribute to what Eddie Guerrero was 20 years ago.
He got a mullet just like Eddie Guerrero had.
Well, yeah, obviously, yeah.
He's got the mustache like Eddie Guerrero. He has a T-shirt that looks like Eddie Guerrero's. When they brought back LWO, they had Eddie Guerrero's voice in the entrance song. Like the WWE is always making sure that we never forget the legacy of Eddie Guerrero. But you got to work with them. But in 2021, you did an interview with Wrestling Inc. Daily Podcast, and you said Eddie was one of the most helpful people to me backstage. He was always giving me advice. He wanted everyone to succeed. Now, that's a great thing to hear about a person. So what did he do backstage to help you?
A lot of it was pacing, tempo of the match, holds. I remember Eddie, I remember talking about holds. He was, a lot of those top guys at the time, the ones that had nothing to prove, they were very interested in taking the new talent and developing it. And I think, really what demonstrates that is you look at what Triple H is doing now as far as developing talent. That's how I always remember Triple H and Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. And I think they're all kind of doing that now, but they were very interested even 20 years ago in developing young talent. Eddie was no different. If Eddie were still with us today, he would be doing something like that because he was very good at developing talent. But a lot of what I worked with Eddie on, from what I remember, was technical aspects of being a heel in the ring. And about learning how to pace my matches and when to slow down and when to speed up. He was one of the best teachers, and I've worked with some of the best because I came from OVW, one of the best teachers that I can remember, just because his knowledge of the business was so substantial. And really, one, it's Eddie Guerrero. So when Eddie talks, everybody shuts up and listens. But two, his ability to teach it was very good as well. Eddie would be an excellent wrestling teacher, again, if he were alive today, because he had a very deliberate way of articulating what he wanted you to do in a term that you can understand. And he was also very complex in explaining the development of the story in the ring and the pace in the ring and how it all fits together. So my memories of Eddie are incredibly fond. And I think Eddie was one of the most helpful people for me backstage as I was trying to learn and really navigate what it was like to be so green and new and a top guy in the WWE.
Yeah, he is, again, one of those characters that everyone brings up in today. And it's so good to hear that all these positive words you said then and even now by Eddie Guerrero, because you didn't work with him on television. And that was one of those things where, but you house shows, you were involved with Eddie Guerrero. And again, take me through just a day with Eddie Guerrero. Like, is he, because you talked about our last podcast where people think, wait, you can memorize 20 sets of moves in a row and you'll do the whole match. Like, what is Eddie Guerrero in the ring? Is he like, oh, we're going to do this spot. I'm going to write everything down for you. Because Macho Man would like have a book and he would hand it to you. Like, this is what we're doing tonight. Good luck. What's Eddie Guerrero?
No, Eddie and Chris were very similar, and they were very quiet, kept to themselves. Again, those were also two guys. Eddie especially didn't really participate in the backstage politics. He was beyond it at that time. But the times that I worked with Eddie, I don't recall ever having any conversation with him previous to a match. I think with Eddie, he was just so good that it was like working with Shawn. You just kind of call it in the ring. And I always felt like when I was working Eddie, I was also being taught at the same time. Eddie was another one of those top guys who wanted to groom me to make money, who wanted to groom me to be a top guy so we could continue to develop the WWE into the product that it became. But a day with Eddie didn't Eddie, I don't know. I just, if I think back about Eddie, I just see Eddie very calm, very relaxed, hanging out. Eddie didn't bullshit. Eddie didn't participate in any of the bullshit. Eddie was all business. He was incredibly professional, super sweet guy. That's my memory of Eddie. He was a very sweet guy. And he was someone that if I had the opportunity, I would just love to hang out with all the time again. He was just a great, great guy.
So did you what? Because obviously some wrestlers are hanging out with each other after the shows. Are you and Eddie Guerrero hanging out? What's the interactions outside the workplace?
No, Eddie. I mean, I'm not hanging out with Eddie. He had his group of people that he hung out with. Chavo, Chris Benoit. Like he had his guys, Ray, that he hung out with. But no, I mean, I was younger. I mean, I was new. I was green. I was with the guys who wanted to go out to the bars and party. Not all the time. Quite often, I did like to go back to my hotel and just unwind because it was so stressful for me. And, maybe I didn't show it, but being so young and having so much responsibility, like, I had said this before, after WrestleMania 21, I didn't go to the after party. I just went to my hotel and crashed. I hadn't slept in days. And so I didn't hang out with Eddie, and backstage, whenever I had a conversation with Eddie, it was professional. It was about what was happening in the ring. It was about how I was going to improve what I was doing in the ring. And it was, kind of me shutting up and listening and taking notes. But Eddie kept to himself, and Eddie kind of did his own thing. A lot of those top guys, they were just beyond the stupid shit that me and the younger guys did,
Most likely, yeah. So like the person you were seeing on television, the lie, the cheat, and the steal and making jokes and laughter, is that the same person you're seeing backstage or he's all business backstage?
But think about it. I mean, they say that all the time. A lot of times the heels are the nicest guys that you're going to meet, and the baby faces are the ones who are dickheads. I mean, Eddie was lie, cheat, and steal, but he was integrity, honesty, humble backstage. He was the complete opposite backstage. He really was.
Wow. Yeah. Because on TV, I remember one time it's Royal Rumble and they're picking numbers, and Ric Flair has a number and he's so excited about it. And Eddie Guerrero comes in and he gives Ric Flair a hug, and then he just leaves. And then Ric Flair is like, "Where's my number? Where's my number?" And he can't find it. Eddie Guerrero stole it from him earlier in the night. And it was one of those, just, oh my God, that's brilliant. Because I don't know if Eddie invented, the take a chair, hit the ground with it while the referee turns his back, you throw it to your opponent, you lay down. I don't know if Eddie Guerrero invented that, but that is him. Like, that is his thing. Anytime he does it today, you still get Eddie Guerrero chance. And to me, it's like, man, you invented something either so original or so iconic that you borrowed from someone else either, and you are still getting credit for it into this world.
I don't think he invented it. He just made it famous. Did it better than it ever done. Yeah, he perfected it. And that's why everybody remembers it, because it was so entertaining and fun to watch.
It truly was. And, it is unfortunate. You kind of brought it up too, where like Eddie Guerrero, some of his big moments when he first showed up on Raw, he's next to Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, and Dean Malenko. Perry Saturn didn't work out. Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko became a producer. Like the people he came in with, and what happened in the end, like Eddie Guerrero, everyone thought Chris Benoit was supposed to be the star from that group. In my opinion, it turned out to be Eddie Guerrero because he had charisma up the ass, like an insane amount of charisma. Like, again, what are your thoughts when you see this man? Because you're thinking, like, I got to work with him on the loop, but yet at the same time, you're seeing him on television. He owns that audience. He can do anything, a little smile, a little wink, and the whole crowd eats it up.
Well, and that's what separates good technical wrestlers from great wrestlers. There are a lot of good technical wrestlers that don't have the charisma, that don't have the personality, that really never go anywhere. There are some actually very amazing technical wrestlers that you've never heard of because they didn't have that one trait that would get them over with the crowd that made you want to watch them. I mean, everybody likes to watch great wrestling, but at the same time, you're not going to sell out an arena with 30,000 people to watch great technical fake wrestling. But you're going to sell that arena out when you have big personalities. Now, what Eddie was able to do was do both. Eddie was a great technical wrestler, so you love to watch him wrestle, because you go way back to Japan and watch Eddie Guerrero and Chris Jericho, like the things he was doing in the ring. If you just take away the personality aspect of wrestling, which is what Japan is, or it was at the time, it was really based on, the audience was entertained based on the technical aspect of wrestling, and if you've ever wrestled in Japan, which I have, it's very weird because they're very quiet. And at least that's how it was. Yeah. But you watch Eddie and you watch the technical aspect and his ability in the ring, and that's entertaining alone. But when he got to the WWE is when his personality really came out. And so Chris Benoit was an amazing technical wrestler. So was Dean Malenko.
Amazing.
Both amazing technical wrestlers. Neither of them had the personality that Eddie did. And I think when he came to the WWE and they gave him the freedom to be Eddie and they gave him that creative control, once he earned that, because he earned it through hard work, through dedication and sacrifice and becoming a leader in the locker room, they let Eddie go. And when they let him go, that's when he really flourished. And that's why Eddie is the star out of that group, because Eddie had the personality, had the charisma. Again, backstage, that wasn't Eddie, at least from my experience with Eddie, which makes it all the more amazing to me. What's amazing is when you have these guys who are very different in person than they are when they're out in front of a crowd, you know that they're acting and you know that they're leveling up some aspect of their personality because they realize that that's what's entertaining. And that was Eddie. Like, he may have some little lie, cheat, and steal in him, but he didn't present that to us because he was so professional. But when he was in the ring, man, that volume was turned up to 10, and that was Eddie. And that's why everybody loved to watch him.
That'd be funny if you're like, well, one time he hugged me and he stole my wallet, but you know, that's a whole different story altogether.
Eddie Guerrero did not need to steal my wallet at the time. He was doing very well. I should have stole Eddie's wallet.
Yeah, I bet it was flushed. You know, I bet it was full. Yeah, it was so weird because when he comes in, though, he has his first night. It's on Raw, and they have this big, oh my God, WCW. The next week, he fights on SmackDown. He does a frog splash and he injures his arm. So now he's in a sling. His first week in the WWE, he's in a sling, and so he can't compete. And it really, in my mind, like, screwed things up for him for a while. And then he got better. Then he got with China. Then Latino Heat was born. Yep. And then obviously as time goes on, some people know, you know, demons in wrestling, it happens. He got let go by the company. He went out in the indies, kicked some serious ass, came back, became a world champion, and dominated and created fans like Sasha Banks and Bayley, and the current crop of talent now are influenced by him. And of course his son, Dominic Mysterio. But, you know, unfortunately though, so like, you're out of the company in 2005, tail end. He passes away in the tail end of 2005. Mm-hmm. So you're not there when it happens. Are you getting phone calls? Like, when does the news happen to you that you find out Eddie Guerrero has passed away?
No, I found out from Sean, I think the morning that everybody else found out when Chavo found him. Speechless. What am I going to say? And you know, it honestly was the same with Chris when Chris passed away. Initially, just feeling so detached from the company at the time, because I was, and feeling detached from the people that I wanted to talk to about this because no one was near me. I was on my own. I was in Los Angeles at the time. My thoughts were that Eddie's dedication to the wrestling business is what killed him in the end. You can't do what Eddie Guerrero does night after night at the level that he does it without needing some help to feel normal. And I think that ultimately that's what did Eddie in at the end. And again, Eddie was a gentle, kind soul, but he was one of the fiercest competitors in the ring. Eddie would never back down from anything. But ultimately he put his body through a beating. You see that with a lot of guys, and people don't realize, you know, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle was another one where Kurt Angle was so beat up in 2005 when I was up there. I mean, it was almost like his entire, and this is 2005, you know what I mean? Like, this was a long time ago. But with Kurt, similar to Eddie, it was almost like their bodies needed to constantly be at rest. And then as soon as their music hit, it was like, boom, and they were up, and you would never know that they were in, and they were just so incredibly tough. When I think of tough guys, like, those are two people that come right to mind that I aspire to be as tough as, and I never will be. But ultimately, you know, when Eddie passed away, it was tough because Eddie and I had a very personal moment after I got all that heat in Japan, which I had talked about on Dark Side of the Ring. Eddie was someone who I always respected, someone who was so helpful and kind to me. Even when I had heat, I never felt any heat from Latino Heat, ironically. I never felt any heat from Eddie. So Eddie passing, it hit me pretty hard, and I felt very alone at the time. But when I look back at it now, I think that Eddie really it was his dedication to the business, that his sacrifice to the business, that ultimately he sacrificed his life for it. Like I said, you can't do what Eddie did night after night, year after year. without that level of pain being something that you want to quiet once in a while. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. You make a good point though, because I've talked to say like, I talked to Sean Mooney a lot on our podcast, and we talk about wrestlers who are died. British Bulldog died at 39 years old, because of the commitment they made to the wrestling business. Sometimes fame costs, and it's not what you think it is. It's relationships with your family, it's your body. Taking pills to wake up, taking pills to go to sleep, and unfortunately, that happens to a lot of wrestlers. And it seems like maybe in today's world, it's not as crazy because the work schedule, they're only working Mondays and sometimes on the weekends, versus how many days a week were you working in 2005, like a normal week for you personally?
4 days. But I think the WWE also learned from their mistakes. Once I had left, and once this had all happened, they instituted the wellness policy, and they were much more deliberate in making sure that their wrestlers were following healthy habits. Before, when I was there, everybody was taking pills because the pain of being in the ring 4 days a week. I think I was watching an interview with Gene Snitsky, my buddy Gene, on Chris Van Vliet, and he said something about something he had read where being a wrestler is like being in 500 car accidents a year or something like that. And I've always used that. I've always used that analogy as well, because of the sheer jolt to your body, of hitting the ring so often. And you do it we were 4 days a week, man. I mean, when I was on Raw, I would come home on Tuesday morning. I'd be home until Friday morning. Then I'd fly out and we'd wrestle Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So 4 nights a week. And even though house shows were much more relaxed, not as intense, they're still bumping. I mean, it's not like you're just going out there and, dancing. You're still putting your body through a lot of impact. And that level of impact is really, it deteriorates your body. I mean, even I only wrestled for a brief amount of time. Now, my career in the WWE was maybe 8 months, but I had been up there for a lot longer doing house shows and dark matches, and then OVW, and then on the indie scene. But I've had to have a few neck surgeries. And I know my lighting is really shitty, so you probably can't even see, but that's me. And then you think of guys like Eddie, like a Chris Benoit, look at modern day John Cena, Randy Orton. Those guys have been doing it for so long. You really don't see or understand the devastation that it does to their body over time, because they hide it so well. I mean, they really truly do. And Eddie was one of those guys where he hit it so well that, and Kurt, we never know until you knew.
Wow. Yeah, it's you're right about the wellness policy being something that kicked in, and as time would go on, a lot of wrestlers either got caught or helped themselves. In the WWE also offered, they went out and like, hey, if you have an addiction, we'll pay for your services, and you can go to rehab and we'll take care of you for that. So in reality, like, they didn't have to do that, but they probably were like, well, man, some shit has hit the fan hard on us, and we need to realize that maybe we've been turning a blind eye to this shit, or we don't want bad PR. A little bit of both, probably.
A little bit of both. I also wanted some longevity. I think they wanted longevity out of the wrestlers. They had seen, I mean, I could sit here and name 30 people within 5 minutes. And they've seen so many wrestlers die because of what had happened, because of what they were doing to their bodies, addiction to pills. Like I said, a lot of us in that era started to rely on them. So I think with the wellness era, what you saw is the shift in WWE from something that was more of you manage your own pain and your own shit to we're going to help you do it because we care about you. We want you to have a longer career. And I think someone like Eddie Guerrero, like I said, those Chris Benoits, that they really kind of changed the way that the WWE handled their talent and what they allowed their talent to do and what they micromanaged. And I think it's been a good thing. From what I hear from my friends who are still up in the business, it's a very different locker room. And it needed to be, because when I was there, it was all around in every aspect. It was a tough locker room. And to have the WWE care so much now about their talent is such a huge win for people who were there 20 years ago where they didn't seem to care at all. So whatever happened, whatever that shift, whatever caused it, whether it be Eddie, whether it be other guys, it's great to see that there's something that came from the tragedy.
Of course. Yeah, 100%. And again, as the frog splash happens, everyone still does the shimmy, the throwing of the steel chair. People still always will respect and love Eddie Guerrero. And it's always a pleasure talking to you about your time in the WWE, especially relationships you created. But if you want to also, go up to you, get a picture or something like that, you can check out, August 30th right there, Retro Toy Market. you can get a nice picture with you if you'd like, and maybe they'll ask you questions about the same thing over and over again, possibly. I don't know. But then also September 28th, that's far away, but we can also get our piggy banks cracked open now and get our money saved, take a picture with you, autograph combo. But when you go to these awesome events like Toy Market here, and then of course here we are there, what is the most common question you get asked? Number one.
Oh God, I don't know. I'll tell you what. I didn't do a lot of those. I'm doing a lot more now, and I really enjoy them because I really do enjoy talking to the fans, and they ask me all kinds of questions, and I really like hearing about their experience with my character because it's always so different. And when I was playing the character 20 years ago, it was always so negative. But then you talk to these people years later, and you find out that they had such a positive experience with the character because they like to boo you, and then they tell you stories. I think that's my favorite part of it. They ask me questions all the time, but it's really a wide range. I don't get asked the same question too often.
Good.
But what I really do enjoy is 20 years later, it still amazes me that people will come to meet me, get a picture and an autograph. And the fact that I had the opportunity to play a character that made such an impact on them. And that's what I like to hear is, I hated you so much when I was a kid, but now I really respect everything that you've been through, things like that. That's why I do it. It's really very intrinsic in its reward. And so I'm going to do a lot more of them, and I'm open for bookings if anybody wants to book me for an appearance, but come see me. I'm going to be in Pittsburgh. I'm going to be in New York. I'm going to be at WrestleCade in North Carolina in November. I'm going to be at WrestleCuse in Syracuse in November as well. So come see me.
That Cuse name is nice and cute, isn't it?
It really works out, doesn't it?
It worked out. It worked out nice for them. But again, thank you everyone for enjoying another edition of the Too Real for the Ring podcast. I'm Steve. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.